They say age is just a number. And while that may be true in spirit, there comes a time in life, often right around the age of 70, when certain changes begin to knock a little louder at the door. Not all of them are unwelcome, of course, but some catch you by surprise, even if you thought you were prepared. It's not that 70 is some magic line in the sand, but rather a gentle turning point. One day you look in the mirror or try to bend over to tie your shoe and you pause. Something feels different. Maybe you've noticed it already. The mornings feel a bit slower. The little creaks in your joints don't fade away as fast as they used to. Or perhaps the pace of life around you starts to feel like it's speeding up while you're standing still. And it can leave you wondering, is this normal? Is this just what happens when you hit 70? The answer is yes and no. In this video, we're going to talk honestly and kindly about 5 things that tend to happen once you cross that 70-year milestone, whether you expect them or not. Not to scare you, and certainly not to discourage you, but to help you understand them, work with them, and even find ways to grow from them. Because 70 isn't the end of something, it's the start of something else. And believe me, this part of the journey can be just as meaningful and rich as any other, sometimes even more. Let's begin with something that sneaks up quietly, like a draft through an open window. Energy, or rather the slow and sometimes confusing disappearance of it. You might have been a person who could go all day without a break. Maybe you were up early, out in the garden, walking the dog, helping the grandkids with homework, and still had energy left over to stay up and watch the evening news. But now by mid-afternoon, your body seems to whisper, "That's enough for today." And no matter how much you try to push through, your muscles feel heavier, your eyelids a little droopier. It's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's biology. As we age, our cells don't regenerate as fast, and that has a direct impact on how much energy we feel during the day. Our heart, our lungs, our muscles, they all begin to work a little harder just to do the same things they did effortlessly 20 years ago. And that's okay. It's part of the natural rhythm of life. The body is smart. It slows us down so we don't overdo it. But here's the thing. You don't have to surrender to that slowness. You can work with it. Gentle movement in the morning can help get the blood flowing. A few minutes of stretching while the coffee brews. A quiet walk after lunch instead of a nap on the couch. It's not about fighting age. It's about adjusting to it, understanding how to keep your energy where it matters most, instead of trying to do everything at once. There's a quiet kind of wisdom in choosing where your energy goes. When you're 70, you've earned the right to be selective. You can say no without guilt. You can rest when you need to without apology. But you can also build new habits that restore you, little by little, so that energy isn't something you chase. It becomes something you manage wisely. Now let's talk about something that might be even more frustrating than fatigue: forgetfulness. You walk into a room and stop, wondering what you came in for. You tell a story and realize you've already told it last week. You put your glasses down and 5 minutes later, they vanished into thin air. Sound familiar? Memory changes are common in your 70s, but the important thing is to know what kind of changes are normal and which ones need more attention. A little forgetfulness is often just part of a slower mental process, not a sign of something more serious. The brain, just like the body, likes to take its time as we age. Information might take longer to recall, but that doesn't mean it's gone. It just means it's stored on a higher shelf, and reaching it takes a bit more effort. Sometimes people get scared when they can't remember something. They jump to conclusions, they panic. But in most cases, the mind just needs a little help. More sleep, less stress, a bit more hydration, or simply more use. Yes, more use. The brain loves to be challenged. Crossword puzzles, reading aloud, learning something new, even if it's just a few words in a different language or how to use a new phone app, all of it keeps those mental muscles sharp. Let me tell you something encouraging here. You're not losing your intelligence. You're not becoming less of yourself. In fact, in many ways, you're becoming more of who you are. You've got decades of experience, judgment, and insight. What's happening is just a shift in how you access all that knowledge. A little slower perhaps, but still rich and meaningful. Like a deep well, it takes a second to draw the water, but it's always there. Here's something else that might come as a surprise. your sense of time changes. You may have noticed that a week goes by faster now than it did when you were 40. Even the seasons seem to flip like pages in a magazine, and that can be unsettling. It might make you feel like life is slipping through your fingers, but it's not. What's actually happening is that your brain is processing time differently. When we're young, everything is new, so our minds absorb more detail and time feels slower. As we age, routine takes over, and the days blend together more easily. But there's a way to slow time down again. Pay attention. Truly notice the small things. The way the sunlight falls on your kitchen table in the morning. The way your neighbor's laugh echoes across the fence. The softness of a blanket. The taste of your favorite tea. When we start truly seeing our days again, we fill them with more detail. And the brain in turn starts recording them more vividly. Time stretches, not in hours but in meaning. This is why hobbies, conversations, and even quiet walks outdoors are more important than ever. They ground you. They anchor your memory in the moment, and they give time its depth back. It's not about how many things you do in a day. It's about how fully you live the moments you choose. Now, before we continue, I want to touch briefly on something many people don't talk about, but almost everyone feels, and that's a quiet sense of being left behind. Whether it's because of retirement, changing social circles, or even just the speed of technology, it's easy to feel like the world is moving on without you. That feeling is normal, and it's painful, but it's also an invitation. It's a sign that you need more connection, not more activity necessarily, just more meaningful connection. A phone call, a walk with a friend, joining a local group, or just talking to the person sitting next to you at the doctor's office. Humans are social creatures no matter how old we get, and connection doesn't fade with age. It just needs new ways to grow. You haven't been left behind. You're still here. You still matter. And your voice, your experience, is still needed. You don't have to keep up with everything. You don't need to know how every gadget works. What matters is that you stay open to the world around you in whatever way works for you. A smile, a question, a story shared. And speaking of stories, let's continue ours. Because now that we've talked about some of the things that shift internally, like energy, memory, and our sense of time, there are still other changes that happen around us and within us that are just as powerful. Let's take a breath and keep going. We've already touched on how aging gently shifts the way we feel inside, our energy, our memory, our perception of time. But the journey doesn't stop there. As you settle into your 70s, something else often starts to surface. And it's not always easy to talk about, but it's real. It's the way your body starts sending signals you didn't ask for. Maybe your knees complain a little louder when you stand up from the couch. Maybe your balance feels slightly off when you step out of bed in the morning. Maybe your hands don't quite listen the way they used to when you're trying to button a shirt. It's not that your body's giving up. It's doing its best with what it has. But like an old car that's been through a few winters, it needs a bit more care, a bit more patience, and a lot more kindness. One of the most common changes people notice after 70 is that their muscles and joints don't cooperate like they used to. You go to lift something that was once easy, and now it takes effort. Or you try to open a jar and your wrist protests. This happens for a simple reason. Muscle mass naturally decreases with age, and our joints become less lubricated, less flexible. That's not your fault. That's not weakness. That's nature doing what it does. But here's the good news. You can work with it, not against it. Even gentle resistance training or stretching can do wonders. I'm not talking about lifting heavy weights or running marathons. I mean slow, steady movement. Maybe a few arm raises while holding soup cans, or using the wall for support while you stretch your legs in the morning. The key isn't intensity, it's consistency. Your body responds to what you give it, even now, especially now. And don't forget how important hydration is. Believe it or not, many people in their 70s walk around slightly dehydrated without realizing it. And when your body lacks water, your joints ache more, your energy drops, and your balance suffers. So that simple glass of water, it might just be more powerful than you think. But let's talk about balance for a moment. Not just physical balance, but also the balance between independence and support. This is another shift that tends to show up quietly in your 70s. You may start to feel more cautious. Walking downstairs becomes something you do more mindfully. You check for railings before stepping into a bath. You start to wonder if you need a nightlight in the hallway. And let me say this as clearly as I can. There is nothing weak or shameful about being cautious. Caution is wisdom in motion. You've made it this far in life because you learned how to take care of yourself. You learned when to trust your gut, when to pause, when to ask for help. And now that same wisdom is showing up in your body's signals. It's reminding you to move a little slower, to hold the railing, to wear shoes that support your step. Not because you're fragile, but because you're experienced enough to know that one wrong move can change everything. Many people wrestle with this silently. They don't want to admit that things feel different. They're afraid that if they acknowledge these shifts, it means they're getting old. But here's the truth. You're not getting old. You're getting smarter about how you live. That might mean installing a grab bar in the bathroom, or using a cane for longer walks, or sitting down to put on your shoes. These are not signs of decline. They're signs of maturity, of choosing safety, so you can keep doing what you love longer. And if anyone tells you otherwise, let them talk. Because the real strength lies in making choices that protect your future, not in pretending you're still 30. Now let's move into another space that many people don't expect to change so noticeably. Your appetite and digestion. It sneaks up slowly. You skip breakfast a few times. Lunch doesn't taste as good. You eat less than you used to and still feel full. Or maybe food just doesn't excite you the way it once did. What's going on? This is actually a very common shift in the 70s. As we age, our sense of taste and smell can dull, especially if you've taken certain medications over the years. That can make food seem less appealing. On top of that, your digestive system starts to slow down, meaning you may feel full faster or experience more bloating or discomfort after meals. You might find yourself avoiding certain foods simply because they don't sit right anymore. And while it might seem harmless at first, this change in eating habits can sometimes lead to unintentional weight loss or even malnutrition if you're not careful. So it's important to listen to your body, yes, but also to nudge it gently when needed. Smaller, more frequent meals can help, including soft, easy-to-digest proteins like eggs or yogurt, adding flavor with fresh herbs instead of too much salt, drinking herbal teas that soothe the stomach. These small adjustments can bring joy back to your meals and help your body feel nourished without feeling overwhelmed. And let's not forget the emotional side of eating. Food isn't just fuel, it's connection, it's memory, it's comfort. So when you notice yourself eating less, ask yourself gently, am I really not hungry, or am I just eating alone too often? Because here's the quiet truth many people don't talk about. Loneliness can suppress your appetite, and that leads us to perhaps the most invisible change of all, the emotional landscape of life after 70. You see, the world starts to feel a bit quieter at this age. People you knew for decades might no longer be around. Children grow busy with their own lives. The phone rings less. The house, once full of noise and movement, now feels still. And that stillness, if left unattended, can grow into loneliness, a kind that weighs heavier than any physical burden. And yet so many people don't speak about it. Maybe they feel they shouldn't complain. Maybe they think it's just how life goes. But no one should ever feel ashamed of feeling lonely. It's not a flaw. It's not a weakness. It's a sign that you are human, that you still long for connection, and that longing means your heart is still alive and open. So what can you do? Sometimes it starts with one small reach outward, a walk where you say hello to a neighbor, a call to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, even a visit to the local library or community center, just to be around others. You don't have to be social in the way you were when you were younger. Just showing up can be enough. And if that feels hard, start with something even simpler. Write a note, not a text, a real note. Send it to someone, even if it's just a thank you or a memory you wanted to share. That act of giving connection often leads to receiving it in return. Because despite what people may say, life in your 70s is not a time of fading. It's a time of deepening. The relationships that matter most come into sharper focus. The clutter falls away, and what remains is what's real. Love, kindness, laughter, companionship. And you can still create new connections, no matter your age. Yes, your 70s may bring unexpected changes. Some days might feel slower. Your body might ask for more rest. Your heart might ache in new ways. But none of that means you've lost your place in the world. In fact, it may be the very opposite. You've entered a new chapter, one where wisdom, patience, and gentleness become your strength. One where joy is found not in the race, but in the quiet moments. And in those moments, there's still so much to live for. If you've made it this far with me, it means you're not only curious about what happens after 70, you're also strong enough to face it with open eyes and an open heart. And that's something worth honoring. We've talked about the shifts in energy, memory, appetite, and even the emotional changes that can quietly take root in this new season of life. But there's one more change, one that creeps in without asking permission, and yet leaves a lasting imprint on nearly everything else: the way your identity evolves. Yes, identity. You may not notice it right away. In fact, it often begins as a subtle sense that you're not entirely sure who you are anymore. Not because you've changed on the inside, but because the world around you starts treating you differently. The title you once carried, whether it was teacher, parent, business owner, or caregiver, starts to fade. The routines that gave your days meaning begin to shift. And all of a sudden, you find yourself wondering, now what? This is more common than you might think. After 70, many people go through what I'd call a quiet identity crisis. You're no longer building a career, raising children, or climbing ladders, whether social or professional. Instead, you're standing in a wide open space, and the silence can feel both freeing and frightening. But here's the beautiful part. You get to redefine yourself, not based on productivity or the expectations of others, but based on what truly matters to you. This is a chapter where you can ask, what brings me peace? What brings me joy? What have I always wanted to do but never had the time for? Some people rediscover passions they left behind decades ago: painting, gardening, writing poetry. Others find joy in learning, picking up a musical instrument, exploring local history, even learning how to use technology to connect with family. There's no rule book anymore, no pressure, just you, your days, and the freedom to fill them how you choose. Still, this freedom can feel strange at first, like standing on a stage without a script. That's why it helps to create a gentle routine, one that includes small acts of purpose. Maybe it's checking on a neighbor, feeding the birds, journaling in the morning. Purpose doesn't have to be big, it just has to be yours. And while you're redefining yourself, something else often begins to take shape as well: a different kind of confidence. Not the loud, youthful kind that's tied to appearance or accomplishment, but a softer, deeper confidence. The kind that comes from having lived through both joy and pain. The kind that understands what really matters and what doesn't. The kind that knows how to sit quietly with discomfort and still feel whole. You might find yourself becoming more patient, or more honest, or even more playful, because the weight of trying to prove something has finally been lifted. You've earned the right to be exactly who you are, without apology. Of course, as your inner world shifts, your outer world often does too. Relationships may evolve. Some grow stronger, others fall away. It's natural, and sometimes it can hurt. You may notice that some friends have become more distant, or that you've drifted apart from certain family members. Maybe old wounds start to resurface, or long-held grudges feel heavier now that time is more precious. These emotional undercurrents can feel even stronger in your 70s because you've got more time to reflect, more silence, more space for old thoughts to rise up. And yet, this season of life also offers something powerful: the chance to forgive. Not because the past didn't matter, not because what hurt you was okay, but because forgiveness can free you. It allows you to travel lighter, to make peace with what's behind you so you can enjoy what's still ahead. You don't have to announce it to anyone. You don't even have to speak the words out loud. Sometimes it's as simple as breathing deeply, placing your hand on your heart and saying, "I release this." On the flip side, you might also find yourself reaching out in ways you hadn't before, saying things you always meant to say, thanking someone for a kindness they probably forgot, apologizing for something that never sat right in your spirit. These small acts, honest, vulnerable, human, can have a ripple effect far greater than you expect. Because connection isn't about how often you talk to someone. It's about how real you're willing to be when you do. Now let's turn to something even more delicate and perhaps more profound: grief. Not just the grief of losing people you love, though that is a deep part of it, but the grief of saying goodbye to different versions of yourself. You may grieve your younger body, your career, your role in the family, the feeling of being needed in the same way. And that grief doesn't always come with tears. Sometimes it comes quietly, in the form of restlessness, or a strange emptiness at the end of the day, or a sudden memory that brings a lump to your throat, and that's okay. Grief at this stage of life is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of love. It means you've lived a life full of meaning, that you've cared deeply, invested yourself in others, and grown through every phase. Grief doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be held, gently, without shame. Some days you'll carry it easily. Other days it might feel heavier, but it will shift. Like clouds, it always does. And in its place often comes a deep gratitude, a quiet thank you for the people, places, and experiences that help shape you. And speaking of gratitude, that's something else that becomes incredibly powerful after 70. You begin to notice it in the smallest things. The way your cat curls up next to you in the afternoon sun, the sound of laughter on the other end of a phone call, the smell of toast in the morning, the softness of your favorite sweater. Life becomes less about milestones and more about moments. You realize that joy doesn't come from more. It comes from enough, from simplicity, from presence, from being right here, right now. That shift from doing to being is perhaps the greatest gift this age offers. You no longer have to chase, prove, or strive. You can just be. And in that being, you can discover a kind of peace that no one can take from you. Even your body, though it may ache more, bend slower, and ask for more rest, is still yours, still worthy, still carrying you forward one day at a time. You may walk a little slower now, but you do so with purpose, with care, with awareness. And that's not a loss, that's a form of grace. So if you've ever felt that aging is a long goodbye, let me offer you a different idea. Maybe it's not a goodbye at all. Maybe it's a homecoming. To yourself, to what matters, to the quiet strength you've carried all along. And as we continue forward, there are still a few more parts of this journey worth exploring, still more truths that show up with the passing years, and still more ways to live with intention, meaning, and joy. As you continue walking this road through your 70s, you may find yourself becoming more aware of something that never used to cross your mind quite so often. Your health, and more specifically, your relationship with doctors, medications, and appointments. Somewhere along the way, checkups become more frequent, and your calendar might start filling up with visits you once only made once a year. If that, it's not just about illness, it's about maintenance. Like an old but reliable house, your body needs attention, care, and upkeep. A few pills in the morning, maybe 1 or 2 at night, a reminder to check your blood pressure or manage your sugar. And while none of this is particularly exciting, it becomes a quiet rhythm in your life, something that you just get used to. But here's where many people go wrong. They let the medical system define their sense of well-being. They start measuring their life only in test results, scan reports, and prescriptions. And while those things are important, they don't tell the full story. You are not your diagnosis. You are not your cholesterol numbers. You are not just a patient. You're a person. A full human being with a soul, a sense of humor, and a story that no lab test can ever explain. Yes, you need to stay on top of your health. You should take your medications as prescribed, get regular checkups, and ask questions when you don't understand something. But don't forget to trust your body too. It knows how to speak to you, through how you sleep, how you breathe, how you feel in your bones. Learn to listen, and not just rely on machines to do the listening for you. And above all, be your own advocate. It's okay to ask the doctor to slow down. It's okay to say, "Can you explain that again in simpler words?" You deserve to be treated with patience, respect, and clarity, no matter your age. Now, with that said, there's another shift that often accompanies these years, one that isn't medical, but deeply physical, and that's your relationship with rest. Not just sleep, but rest in all its forms. Mental rest, emotional rest, social rest. You begin to feel when your energy is being drained, not just by activity, but by certain people, situations, or even thoughts. You might notice that loud places tire you out faster, or that small talk feels exhausting. You start craving quiet, not out of loneliness, but because your soul finally wants room to breathe. You begin choosing your conversations more carefully. You seek out spaces where you don't have to perform, explain, or compete. Spaces where you can simply be. This is a beautiful thing. Because rest, true rest, isn't about doing nothing. It's about doing what nourishes you. That could mean sitting by the window with a book, or tending to your plants, or simply enjoying a warm cup of tea in silence. You don't have to earn this rest. You've earned it already by living, by working, by giving. And now you can rest without guilt. Yet for many, there's still a small voice inside that says, I should be doing more. You might feel guilty for slowing down, even though your body's asking for it. That voice is old conditioning. It comes from a life spent being useful, needed, productive. But now your value isn't in how busy you are. It's in your presence, in your wisdom, in your ability to simply sit beside someone and make them feel safe. That's a kind of power that doesn't fade with time. It grows. Now let's talk about something that might surprise you, your sense of spirituality, or even just your curiosity about the bigger picture of life. Many people find that after 70, they start asking different kinds of questions. Not what do I want to achieve, but what does it all mean? What truly matters now? What comes next, if anything? And whether you've been religious all your life, spiritual in your own quiet way, or not a believer at all, it's common to begin exploring these questions more deeply. You might think about people you've lost. You may feel their presence in unexpected ways. You might find yourself drawn to nature, to music, to the stillness of a chapel, or the sound of the ocean. These moments pull you closer to something bigger than yourself. And that's not strange, it's human. Because when you've lived long enough to see the full spectrum of life, the births, the goodbyes, the joys and losses, you begin to understand that life is more than what we see with our eyes. There's mystery to it. There's meaning, even in the smallest moments. And your heart begins to open in ways it didn't when you were younger and rushing through everything. Some people turn to prayer, others turn inward. Some write letters to loved ones who've passed. Some walk quietly under the trees and simply listen. There's no right way to feel connected. What matters is that you allow space for it, that you listen to the questions that rise up in you, not to find answers, but to sit with them gently. And while we're on the subject of change, there's one more that's worth honoring, and that's your ability to see life differently. You may find yourself feeling more compassionate, more understanding of other people's struggles, more forgiving of your own past mistakes. Your 70s have a way of softening you, not in weakness, but in clarity. You begin to understand what others are going through because you've walked similar paths. You're less interested in judgment, more interested in peace. That's why so many people over 70 become the wise presence in their family or community. Not because they have all the answers, but because they've stopped pretending to. They speak from experience. They listen deeply. They say what needs to be said, without noise but with weight. And you, whether you know it or not, are becoming one of those people. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to always know what to say. Just being present, just showing up, has more impact than you realize. A quiet word at the right time, a hug, a smile, a moment of silence shared. These are the things people remember. These are the legacies that live on long after we're gone. And that brings us to something both simple and profound. You're still becoming, even now, especially now. You are not finished. You are still growing, still feeling, still learning. You're not here to fade away. You're here to shine differently, not like a burning flame, but like a steady lamp that lights the room softly and steadily, even when the rest of the world grows dim. You've been through storms and seasons. You've said goodbye to people you loved. You've made mistakes. You've healed from hurts you didn't think you could. And now in your 70s, you get to decide how this part of the story will be told. Not by pretending you're young, not by fearing that you're old, but by standing right where you are, with both feet planted in truth and saying, this is my time. I've earned every wrinkle, every scar, every lesson, and I will live these years not in fear, but in presence. you are still here. And that means your life still holds purpose. If you've listened this far, let me begin by saying something simple, but important. You're doing better than you think. No, really. It's easy to focus on what's changed. The aches, the slower pace, the forgetful moments, the quieter days. But underneath all of that is a life still unfolding, one that holds value not because of what you do, but because of who you are. We've talked about a lot in this video, about how energy shifts, how memory becomes a little fuzzier, how the body starts to speak in new ways, and how even our roles, relationships, and identity go through quiet but powerful changes. These are the signs that life is still in motion, not winding down, but reshaping itself. And yes, once you turn 70, these changes happen whether you like it or not. But that doesn't mean you're powerless in the face of them. Quite the opposite. You have the choice now to respond, not with fear, but with grace. Not with resistance, but with curiosity. Not with regret, but with readiness. Because this stage of life offers something the younger years could never give you: perspective. You know now what matters. You've seen enough to know that not all storms need to be fought, that some things are better left unsaid, that peace is often more valuable than being right, that a slow day can be a good day, that the people who sit quietly beside you are worth more than all the applause in the world. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, but what now? What do I do with all of this? Here's what I'll tell you. You live, not the way the world expects you to live, not the way social media says you should, not even the way your past self imagined it. You live in the way that feels real to you now. That might mean downsizing to a smaller place and keeping only what you love. It might mean finally going on that trip, even if it's just a few towns over. It might mean starting every day with your favorite music and a cup of tea. It might mean talking to yourself a little more kindly when you look in the mirror. It might mean calling someone just to say, "I was thinking about you," or volunteering, or painting, or walking in the rain without caring if you get wet, or sitting in your chair, watching the sky, knowing that you've made it this far, and that alone is worth celebrating. Now, some days will still be hard. That doesn't stop. The body will still hurt sometimes. Grief may visit unannounced. Loneliness may tap at your shoulder. You might still wonder if you matter. But on those days, I want you to remember something. You are the keeper of stories. You are a living archive of moments and wisdom that no one else can carry. You are someone's safe place, someone's memory, someone's source of comfort, even if they don't say it out loud. You don't need to change the world at 70. You are the world to someone, just as you are, and every day you get to wake up is a page yet to be written. So write it the way you want. Laugh when you can, cry when you need to, rest when you must, speak up when it matters, love deeply, forgive freely, and don't forget to let yourself feel proud of the road you've walked, because it's yours, and it has led you here. Now, before we go, I want to say this clearly, in case no one has said it to you lately. You are needed, you are worthy, and you are loved. You don't have to be busy or useful or impressive to be valuable. You already are, just by being here. If anything in this video spoke to you, if it made you feel seen or understood, or just a little more hopeful, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments what part of aging surprised you the most, or what advice you'd give to someone just entering their 70s. Let's build a space where honesty and encouragement go hand in hand, where people our age can speak freely without pretending to be anything other than what we are: real, seasoned, and still learning. And if this video made you feel even a little more at peace with where you are, go ahead and tap that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because this won't be the last time we talk. There's still so much more to share. I wish you a full and joyful life at any age. And as always, take care of yourself. We'll talk again soon.